He was distracted again. This time when we were choosing the wedding candies. Before I could say anything, a phone rang suddenly. He glanced at it, hung up. But it rang again. He hung up once more. And soon it rang for the third time. Finally, when he hesitated and didn't hang up, I looked at the shop assistant beside us who was forcing a smile and said to him, "Maybe the other side has something urgent. You'd better answer the phone first. I'll take a look by myself." He finally let out a sigh of relief and turned to walk out of the store. I observed his profile through the glass wall. His lips only opened and closed occasionally, so it seemed that the other person was mainly doing the talking. What were they talking about? I was really curious. Although Joseph had always deliberately kept his phone screen away from me, I knew that it was Olivia on the other end of the line. Joseph's unforgettable ex-girlfriend. I sighed. It was always himself with his overly obvious behavior that betrayed him, and I was just deceiving myself. The shop assistant quickly turned her enthusiasm towards me again. I hurriedly said, "I don't want to choose anymore. Just go with the set you recommended just now. Please prepare the goods for us directly." Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. The shop assistant agreed and asked me to take a rest on the sofa by the glass wall. She rushed to prepare the goods. I raised my foot and suddenly stopped her, adding, "I don't want chocolates. I don't want any style or brand of chocolates." "Are you sure? I thought that your husband spent so much time looking for the liqueur chocolates because you like them," the shop assistant asked in confusion. "No, I hate chocolates, especially liqueur chocolates," I said coldly, ignoring the shop assistant's awkward and inquisitive gaze, and turned to walk towards the sofa by the glass wall. Joseph was standing just outside the glass wall at this moment. He had his back to me, and the phone call still hadn't ended. I took out my phone and opened the Instagram. After scrolling down just a little, I came across the post that Olivia had sent last night. I haven't eaten it for a long time. Whether it's chocolates or men, the ones from the past are more delicious. The accompanying picture was a photo of liqueur chocolates, exactly the same type that Joseph had been looking for but couldn't find just now. Presumably, it was taken by her before, when Joseph was still by her side. The chocolate in the picture was bitten open, and you could clearly see the moist tooth marks on the outer layer of chocolate and the clear liqueur in the middle. Even through the screen, I could feel that at the moment of biting into it, the richness of the chocolate and the slight intoxication of the liqueur would burst in the mouth, as if young lovers were embracing and having a passionate kiss. I couldn't help but feel my heart flutter. Looking up at Joseph outside the wall again, although his name wasn't in the list of likes, I knew he had seen it. Because ever since Olivia announced her divorce on Moments, during our busy wedding preparation period, he had been distracted way too often, just like he was a while ago. I just didn't know if when he saw it, his heart had also felt as itchy as if ants were crawling slowly across it. Suddenly, I had a childish urge to compete, so I liked Olivia's post and left a comment. What a pity. Even the sweetest chocolates will be discontinued. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Joseph's phone call lasted for a long time. So long that the shop assistant informed me that the goods had been prepared and then came to ask me if we still needed candy boxes. She actively took out her phone and showed me many pictures, such as the Instagram-style ones with ribbon bows, the fresh and natural wooden box style, the creative and funny styles that were popular online, and so on. Her fingers swiped quickly, and her tongue moved non-stop like a machine gun. I didn't have a chance to refuse at all. I planned to just choose one casually so that I could quickly get away from this torment of flying saliva. Joseph finally hung up the phone and came in. He walked towards me. His mouth was smiling, but his eyes weren't. "Have you chosen?" His tone was very gentle, but I couldn't help examining every subtle expression on his face, secretly speculating whether this gentleness was a remnant of what he had shown to another woman just now. "Yeah, the candies have been decided, but the shop assistant asked if we want to choose the candy boxes as well." The clever shop assistant immediately turned around and held the phone in front of him, trying to repeat the marketing words she had said before. He frowned after looking at it for a few times, gently waved away the shop assistant's hand, and asked, "Do you have any European fairy tale style ones? Something more lovely and romantic." He had always been a person with clear goals. He knew exactly what he wanted and what he liked. and his requirements were clear and his expressions definite, leaving no room for negotiation. "Sorry, sir. Our basic styles don't have the style you want." The shop assistant was frustrated by him again, but her rich sales experience quickly gave her the courage to continue. "However, we can provide a personalized customization service for the two of you, but you need to pay an additional design fee, especially since I just heard that your wedding is approaching. We definitely need to rush the order, and that will also require an extra fee. What do you think?" He quickly replied. "The extra fee is not a problem. Just rush the customization according to my requirements, and make a sample for me to see as soon as possible." I pulled his arm and softly persuaded him under the gaze of the shop assistant. "How about just choosing one casually? This is too troublesome and not cost-effective." He patted the back of my hand and said, "We can't be casual. I want to give you the most unforgettable wedding. So of course everything has to be perfect." He was really a qualified groom. He cared much more about our upcoming wedding than I did. It seemed that we had reversed our genders. I was like many men, not having so many expectations and feeling tired of the troublesome details of the wedding. I didn't like the romantic and luxurious European fairy tale style, nor did I care what kind of candies we would have or what kind of wedding favors we would prepare for the guests. If possible, I would prefer a simple and plain wedding for just the two of us, without anyone else watching. As long as I was wearing the simple satin wedding dress that I liked and walked towards my groom step by step, with only each other in our eyes, sincerely saying, "I do," to each other, and then naturally having a passionate kiss without any scruples. But he always said that he wanted to give me the best. How could I be the bad guy and reject his kindness? It was just that looking at the upcoming wedding gradually taking on a shape that I had never imagined, it was hard for me not to doubt whether this so-called best was really meant for me. The shop assistant looked at me with envy, as if I was the happiest bride-to-be she had ever seen. I smiled and took it as a tacit agreement, saying, "Then let's go for the customization." On the way back, I turned to look out of the car window as soon as I got in. Joseph also seemed to have no intention of talking, and there was an odd silence in the atmosphere. This lasted until his mother called and asked us to go home for dinner tonight. "Jessica, Mom specially asked someone to buy the Yongcheng Lake Harry crabs. They're already in the steamer, waiting for you too." Joseph held the steering wheel, and his phone was placed on the car mount with the speaker on. His mother's local accent, which carried a hint of softness and a smile, made the originally silent car come alive. I felt a bit warmer in my heart and quickly replied, "Okay, Auntie, we're on our way and we'll be there soon." He had an enviable and happy family with understanding parents. I didn't know how he had explained it to his parents, but they were especially kind to me, and I hadn't invited any relatives or unnecessary outsiders to witness the most important moment of my life. In fact, I didn't even have my parents by my side. It seemed that I was born to be lonely. When I was a child, most of the leisure time after dinner was spent watching TV dramas with my mom. In the happy ending weddings in those dramas, the bride always had a sincere smile on her face and would walk towards the groom, arm in arm with her father. At this moment, no matter how tough the father was, he would suddenly become sentimental. After giving several instructions, he would finally be willing to place his daughter's slender hand, covered with a white glove, into the hands of the long-awaited groom. Some would even be as reluctant as if they were handing over a precious family heirloom passed down for generations, crying uncontrollably. So fake. Every time I saw such a scene, I would say disdainfully, my mom beside me was more like a little girl who never grew up. She often cried more sincerely than the characters in the drama. I thought her acting was much better, but it was a pity that her appearance was a bit lacking. Otherwise, if she played the role, it might be even more touching. What's fake about it? There's no parent who doesn't love their daughter. Really? Then why doesn't Dad come home? My words were actually a bit vicious. I knew very well that Dad had another family outside. Since I could remember, Dad rarely came home. Mom said he was doing business outside and asked me to understand him, for the sake of the various novel toys that Dad would bring me every time he came home. I was willing to listen to Mom and barely endured his prickly affection when he came back occasionally. I always thought we were a normal family, until I gradually grew up, went to school, and expanded my activities. Inevitably, the voices of the neighbors reached my ears from all directions in various ways. It was really absurd that I actually learned the truth about my family from other people's mouths. Do you know that the man in Hayden's family has a mistress outside? Hey, I heard that your dad doesn't want you anymore. My mom said he had another son outside. The first time I heard these words, I went home crying and questioned my mom. Is what they said true? Why did you lie to me? Mom quickly covered my mouth and said viciously, don't listen to their nonsense. It's those little vixens outside who seduced him. Your dad can't possibly not come back. I won't divorce him and let him have a good time outside. As long as I don't divorce him, I'm still Mrs. Lynn. I was scared by the hatred in her eyes that I had never seen before and didn't dare to say anything. Later, after hearing it many times, I gradually understood that it wasn't hatred. She loved Dad. The harsher her words were, the deeper her love was. She not only didn't allow me to deny her love but also asked me to wear a false mask and still love Dad as if I knew nothing. I wasn't as good at deceiving as she was. I couldn't do it. He's busy with his career outside. You need to understand him. He loves you and our family. She always said this, not knowing who she was talking to. He will come back sooner or later. When you grow up and get married, you will also walk towards the man you love, arm in arm with him. I couldn't help but start saying harsh words too. I don't want him. I don't want to get married either. Mom would always push me and say, what silly things are you saying, child? Indeed, they were silly words. From the first day I met Joseph, I completely threw my childish vow out of my mind. I dreamed of marrying him, who made him appear out of the blue at my most frightened moment, stunning me and stirring up waves in my otherwise still heart. He had to be responsible for me. When I was in college, Dad finally returned home, stopped running around, and opened a small supermarket with Mom in our local area, leading an ordinary life. Mom was like a victorious general. After enduring for so many years, she finally straightened her back and started going out to socialize. I heard her show off to others more than once. You see, men know very well who is the most important. Those women outside are just for fun. When it's time to come home, they will naturally come back. She smiled so brightly. I didn't understand but was happy along with her. But I had already gotten used to a life without a father and couldn't accept his pretended affection as I did in my childhood. So I deliberately chose a university far away from home and even made excuses not to go home during winter and summer vacations. During the summer vacation of my sophomore year, Mom finally exploded. She couldn't accept that a family that had finally become complete was losing a member again. I still remember that night. I was sitting on a bench in an old park near the school, listening to Mom on the other end of the phone asking me loudly with a crying voice, "Why are you so disobedient? Are you trying to drive me to death?" There were a lot of mosquitoes in the park at night. I slapped and killed a mosquito that was feasting on my blood on my calf with one hand while holding the phone with the other, and perfunctorily said, "I'm not. I really have something to be busy with at school. I promise you that next time I have a vacation, I will definitely go home." After several rounds of arguing, my mom couldn't do anything to me because of the distance. After making me promise several times, she finally hung up the phone. Before hanging up, she casually complained, "You're really your dad's biological daughter. Even the words you used to perfunctory me are the same as his when he was young." I was stunned for a moment and suddenly found it funny. Genes were really amazing things. I had become the person I hated the most. I didn't know that I couldn't help laughing out loud. And this laugh almost killed me. "Little beauty. What's so funny? Why don't you have a chat with Uncle?" I was so busy dealing with my mom that I didn't notice that in the dark park, a lewd old man had appeared out of nowhere. He was wearing a washed-out old man's shirt. His pants were loose, and he reeked of alcohol as he approached me. I instinctively stepped back and wanted to run, but this instead excited him. He dragged out a chain of laughter and got closer and closer to me. I tensed every inch of my skin and desperately ran towards the exit on the park path. But I still couldn't escape the increasingly clear and terrifying laughter in my ears. "Help!" I shouted loudly. No one came. I could only keep running. Finally, I saw the exit. Outside was a busy avenue. I could even see the traffic lights. Where there were lights, there were people. And where there were people, there was hope of being saved. But I was still too slow. At the flower bed at the exit, a dark and rough forearm grabbed my neck, and my breathing became difficult instantly. I listened to the laughter of the person behind me in despair and struggled as I was dragged towards the woods deep in the park. Let me go. Help! Help! I shouted as loudly as I could. That's when Joseph appeared out of nowhere. I can't describe what he was like to me at that moment. All descriptions were too shallow and couldn't depict even 1/10,000th of the surging emotions in my heart. At that moment, I understood all those cheesy plots in idol dramas. Saving the beauty in distress is not really cliched. And offering to marry the savior is not an exaggeration either. A hero is a hero. From the moment he appeared, I began to fall in love with him. His young and strong arms easily made that man kneel down in submission, and also made my heart fall uncontrollably. But we were also careless because of our youth. On the way to take that man to the police station, he was stabbed in the arm by a small knife that the man carried with him. A momentary lapse in vigilance was enough for the bad guy to escape in the chaos. Joseph was very frustrated about this, and I was in a panic looking at his bleeding wound. I quickly pulled him to the hospital. Even though he was grimacing in pain, he still smiled and comforted me. It's okay. I took a look. The wound isn't deep. I can just go back to my dormitory and deal with it with some gauze. He added, don't worry. I'm a postgraduate majoring in clinical medicine at University A. Judging by your appearance, you're also a student. Right. Hello. My name is Joseph. Would you like to be friends? I couldn't say no to him. What a coincidence. Hello. Senior. My name is Jessica, and I'm from the same university as you. What's even more coincidental is that I'm also studying medicine, but I'm dedicated to exploring human psychology. Naturally, we went back to school together. At a traffic light intersection, I took advantage of the light to look up at his face. His jawline was well defined. His facial features were regular, and he had a very tough-looking face. He looked very reassuring. I had naturally imagined my future partner. I often set a series of standards and then was picky about them, always unable to come to a definite conclusion. But after he appeared, all my requirements and standards compromised and changed beyond recognition. I liked whatever he was like. Probably my gaze was too intense, so he pursed his lips slightly and looked down to gently admonish me. Although it's not your fault, but a girl shouldn't wander around in secluded places at night. A gentleman doesn't stand under a dangerous wall. Not every man can restrain himself from becoming a dangerous wall. I wasn't wandering around. I was going for a walk and stopped to answer a phone call in the middle. A walk? Yeah, as long as it doesn't rain. I go for a walk in that park every night. I answered seriously. The look of confusion on his face made him look stupidly cute, and I, who was still in a state of shock, actually felt a bit amused. The old park was near the school and had been abandoned for a long time, except for a small lake covered with green algae. There were no pleasant landscapes, let alone the overgrown flower beds. There were few people going there usually. Since I passed by it accidentally, I fell in love with this place that no one paid attention to. At first, I went there occasionally, as there were more annoying phone calls. I went there more often. If you like walking, can't you go during the day or find someone to accompany you? He asked again. No, I have too many worries that I need to get rid of. I can only calm down at night, and having someone around would be too noisy. He paused and then asked me, can walking really get rid of your worries? Before I could answer, he offered on his own. Do you mind if I join you in the future? What a coincidence. I also have a lot of worries that I want to get rid of. Okay. Before my brain could think, my heart eagerly agreed. Even though I knew almost nothing about him, my heart was beating wildly for him, and nothing could hold it back. He was like a prairie fire raging wildly in my heart. When you're with the person you like, being noisy isn't really noisy. It's about exchanging hearts with each other. But God was really too cruel to me. I ran out of my father's shadow only to be trapped in my mother's shadow. Just like her, I fell in love with someone who didn't love me. Later, I realized that all those coincidences were actually fated necessities. On the day my heart started living because of him, his heart had already died for another woman. After that day, we exchanged WeChat contacts. The old park had already become my private territory. Like a warm and hospitable host, I showed him every corner of it. I never thought that I could be such a talkative person. The park was my kingdom of women, and I was the king who was infatuated with him, trying to keep him, the Tang monk, captive. He happily accepted. My kingdom became ours. and we created the greatest joy in our own kingdom. With the cycle of nature, we went through the 4 seasons, listened to the breath of the wind. When we were bored, we even paid attention to the tree leaves. The leaves of the metasequoia were tender green and lovely, but they had sharp edges like needles. The sensitive plant was like a shy little girl who would close her leaves timidly with just a gentle touch. Rows of dense willows hung down by the lake. When the wind blew in winter, we shivered in the cold wind together with the willow branches. I often deliberately observed his expression, wanting to know what the worries he had mentioned were. To be more precise, who was the lucky one who made him as worried as I was? But I never asked. We just got along like this, changing from strangers to old friends. I liked this plain and uneventful way of getting along. It had an old-fashioned kind of romance. In the 5th year since we met, I still stubbornly stayed in this city, not wanting to go home, and more importantly, because he was a local. His family had 2 houses, and he lived in one of them alone. To help me save on rent, he invited me to live with him at a very low friendly price. I couldn't have asked for more and was afraid that he would go back on his word. After graduation, we both became doctors. He saved lives, and I saved hearts. But in fact, most of the time, we were powerless and could only watch as one vivid body after another became stiff and the souls died. Our worries only increased. He was distressed by his inability to save those broken bodies, and I tried my best to avoid being dragged into hell by those desperate or painful hearts. We still couldn't get out of the old park, and we wasted our free time there when we weren't working. I was willing to waste time on him. I naively thought that he felt the same way. I just didn't expect that secretly. During our time together, he was missing the past with another woman. One day, he excitedly took my hand to show me his amazing discovery. It turned out that somehow, the wind had carried spores, which absorbed the rich underground sap in the flower beds of the old park, and presented us with a few clusters of wild mushrooms. Our cautious instincts as doctors made us repeatedly identify them through various methods, and luckily, we confirmed that they were non-toxic. Shall I make soup with them when we take them back? There was a childlike excitement on his face. Great. Such fresh mushrooms will surely make a very fragrant soup. He had excellent cooking skills. The saying that to capture a man's heart, you need to capture his stomach also applies to women who can't cook. The soup that day was very delicious. It was so delicious that I was so excited that I couldn't help but want to possess this man sitting across from me and watching me drink the soup. So I asked Joseph, "Do you remember the day we first met?" "Of course. It's really strange. No one usually goes there. But you showed up just at the right time that day. Do you think we're very destined? Maybe you're the Mr. Right that God sent to me." His half-minute silence made the smile that I had forced out due to nervousness freeze on my lips. Haha, I'm just kidding. Don't take it seriously. I tried to gloss over this awkward situation with a joke, but he wouldn't let me off. He said calmly, "I showed up that day because my ex-girlfriend wanted to break up with me. Probably she was afraid that I would pester her and make it embarrassing. There were few people there, so she asked me to meet her there to talk." This was a reason that I had never expected. I was silent for a while and then asked, "Why did she want to break up?" Joseph shrugged. "What else could it be? She thought I was boring and fell in love with someone else." "Is that person better than you? Is there still a chance to get back together?" He chuckled. "It's not fair for you to ask like that. I can't very well admit that I'm worse, can I? As for getting back together, I won't force someone who doesn't love me to stay." It wasn't a very heavy conversation, but I could easily see the disappointment in his eyes. Just like me, he still missed her. I didn't need to ask to know the answer. Just like my confession hadn't even officially started, but it already had a result. Do all those who have the upper hand in love not cherish the people around them? I sympathized with him, just like I sympathized with my mother. I loved him, just like my mother loved my father. So I didn't plan to give up. From that day on, I didn't want to go to the old park anymore. But our walking activities didn't stop. I deliberately expanded the scope to the whole city. But he was so cruel. I tried to add new memories that belonged to us. But he insisted on being a prison warden, imprisoning me in the love story between him and another woman. He treated me like a memory mailbox, one after another. Her figure blatantly squeezed between us, day by day. From our conversations during walks, I gradually pieced together the image of this girl named Olivia. She was also an alumnus of our university, in the same grade as Joseph. It was no exaggeration to call her a remarkable person. I once saw her from a distance at a school evening party. She performed a folk dance alone, wearing a green dress with flowing sleeves. With just a flick of her fingers, she was full of grace. When she tilted her head back, she was like a proud peacock. I remember that my roommate once sighed that such a woman was naturally sought after by men. Indeed, I didn't pay attention, but I also heard that she had many suitors. I never thought that one day I would be qualified to be her rival in love. The Olivia in Joseph's words was more three-dimensional. She liked colorful fireworks, romantic fairy tales, delicious mushroom soup, and sweet liqueur chocolates. During the days when we measured the city with our feet, I measured love from his memories. I often laughed at myself in my heart. How could there be a woman who loved a man because of his love for someone else? But the fact was just like that. The day he saved me out of the blue, I fell in love with him at first sight. His infatuation made me fall in love with him more and more as time passed. When love reaches its peak, it's like honey naturally crystallizing in winter, changing from a thin liking to a mellow love. The best kind of love is when two hearts are mutually committed. I don't have that kind of luck. My love is the second-rate kind. I love him, who loves someone else. In the 6th year since we met, Joseph proposed to me. I will never forget the spring of this year, the season when the pink and white oleanders bloomed clustered on the branches. My mother, who had deceived herself all her life, finally broke free from the lies that had bound her all her life. In a posture that refused to admit defeat, my father's illegitimate son came to our house with a clear goal: to ask for the house, the money, and the storefront. My father made a decision quickly, leaving no room for negotiation. After all, he was the legitimate son who could carry on the family line, better than the daughter who would eventually get married and leave home. My mother was still the same as before, defending the person she held dear, but this time the object had changed from my father to me. I was as cold-blooded and heartless as my father and refused to go home. She issued death threats to me countless times on the phone, but this time was an exception. She left quietly and resolutely. She mixed a small cup of pesticide into the thick soup for dinner, and from then on, she fulfilled her wish and was with my father forever. The night I received the call from the police, I went to the old park alone. I didn't care about the scenery and went straight to that small lake. On the bench by the lake, Joseph had actually arrived first. He had his back to me, and I couldn't see his face. There were only faint sobbing sounds. I was really curious. I hadn't even started. So why was he crying first? Perhaps he heard someone coming. So he turned his head. A tear just slid out of his eye, passing over the embarrassment, surprise, and sadness that hadn't dissipated from his face. "Why are you here?" We said it at the same time. He automatically made room for me, and I walked over and sat beside him. "She got married." "Oh, my mom passed away, taking my dad with her." The air suddenly fell silent. "I won't have her in my life from now on." "Oh, I won't have anyone who can bother me in my life from now on." We stopped talking. I leaned against his shoulder, and he also lowered his head and leaned against mine. We freely released our cries. The insects and frogs didn't understand human sorrow and unknowingly echoed our cries. The next day, I went back to my hometown to deal with the funeral, facing the curses of various relatives I didn't know. I forcefully skipped many procedures. My mother had loved so purely and resolutely in her life, and I didn't want her to be judged by irrelevant people after she passed away. After turning all the assets into cash, my life became much richer, and I also had the courage to leave that home that didn't belong to me and that man who didn't love me. My mother was a lesson for me, waking me up from my dream. I was afraid of repeating the same mistakes. Joseph had originally said he would accompany me back, but I refused. Before leaving, I secretly asked an intermediary to help me find a house. I was following in my mother's footsteps, but I didn't want to become the second her. I didn't want humble love. On the day I was packing my things and preparing to move, Joseph stood quietly by the side for a long time before asking, "Do you really have to leave?" "I don't have a reason to stay, do I?" He was at a loss for words. After a while, he said, "Shall we go for a walk? It'll be the last time." I thought about it and said, "Okay." I put down the things in my hand, asked him to wait, deliberately put on makeup, and put on the coat that he had praised for looking nice before going out. For the last time, I wanted to leave the most beautiful me in his memories. This was the first time we went for a walk during the daytime. We had no destination and no direction, just walking along the old street outside the community. When we passed by a flower bed, he suddenly said to me, "Look, the greenery has been updated again." I looked in the direction he pointed. There were blooming peonies. The greenery was always being updated. In early spring, there were tulips. In summer, there were roses. In winter, there were pansies. No matter how it changed, the flowers in the flower bed were always in full bloom. I sighed. So beautiful. It's a pity that once the flowering period is over, they'll be replaced. He said again, "You know what? I never paid attention to these things when I passed by before. It's you who made me realize that there's romance everywhere in this city." I smiled. Fortunately, my 6 years weren't in vain after all. To him, I wasn't insignificant. When we reached a fork in the road, I wanted to go left and he wanted to go right. We decided by playing rock paper scissors, just like we used to, but this time he wanted to add a stake. "If I win this game of rock paper scissors, you'll stay and we'll get married." He said it so seriously. So I said, "Okay." Not getting what one wants is the norm in life. The probability of two people in love getting married in this world is so small. It's already rare to meet the person you love and be able to be with them. In terms of love, I don't dare to ask for more. We had our hands behind our backs, holding our breaths nervously, and counted in unison. 1, 2, 3. In the end, he showed rock and I showed scissors. This was a game that he was bound to win because I wanted to lose. The story had come this far, and it should have had a happy ending. But Olivia got divorced. Just the day after I agreed to Joseph's proposal, she took the initiative to add me on WeChat. And the note message was, "I'm Olivia." She was full of confidence, believing that I must have heard her name and knew about their inseparable past. After adding me as a friend, she didn't say anything, but her moments was open. I looked at the latest post. It was just yesterday that she announced to the world that she was single again and could start accepting the pursuit of all the men who still missed her. Or maybe she was just announcing to Joseph and me that he could go back to her, and I should be sensible enough to let go. So that's how it was. But why? Joseph didn't do as she expected. I thought he would break up with me, but unexpectedly, he sped up the process of preparing for the wedding, as if I was the one he had been longing for, making him look forward to getting married. However, why did he keep being distracted? I almost managed to deceive myself into believing that he really loved me. The wedding came so quickly. The customized candy box was ready in time. But before I could figure everything out, I got into the wedding car. Halfway there, I suddenly made a request and asked the driver to take a detour through the road past the old park. The driver kindly reminded me that we might not have enough time. I looked at Joseph, who was sitting beside me. The tailor-made suit fit him perfectly and smoothly. Compared with the fearless young man who stood up for justice when we first met, he now had a stern face, and even his voice was always calm and restrained. Over the years, we had both been polished by time and became more and more tactful. He was better than me. He could now talk and laugh in the face of death, while I was struggling with the relationship between loving and being loved in the face of various life experiences. Sometimes I wondered if the current him, if he met the me from back then, would still have the courage to come to my rescue. I said, "I want to take a detour over there. Do you really have to? There might be a rush in the schedule. How about I accompany you there tomorrow?" I answered firmly again, "No, I have some worries again and I must solve them now." He paused for a few seconds and then said to the driver, "Take a detour from there." We stopped talking and looked out the window at the scenery on our own, until I saw the familiar fence wall of the old park through the car window. My love had sprouted here. After the car stopped by the roadside, the driver made an excuse to smoke and left the space for us. I took out a liqueur chocolate from the small bag beside me and gave it to Joseph. He looked at me in confusion, and I said, "Try it. It's not the kind you were looking for, but it's the most similar one I could find." He peeled off the candy wrapper and took a bite. The juice almost splashed onto the collar of his suit. He was a bit annoyed. He chewed a few times and swallowed it. I handed him a tissue, and he quickly took it, frowning as he wiped his collar. I asked, "You've been longing for it for so long. Is it delicious?" He couldn't hide his disgust and said, "It's too sweet, and the taste is a bit cheap." Fortunately, I didn't buy it at that time. He tentatively asked me, feeling a bit guilty, "Why did you give me this?" "Olivia got divorced. What are you going to do? I didn't have time to beat around the bush, so I asked directly. He was like a frightened cat, instantly exuding a sense of nervousness all over his body. How did you know? Naturally. She told me on her own initiative. But I don't care about her thoughts. I just want to ask you, do you still love her? He opened his mouth, and it took him a long time to answer irrelevantly. I don't want to settle for less. Then do you love me? Isn't marrying me just settling for less? This time he answered quickly and firmly. To be honest, I've thought about it many times. I don't know if I love you, but I'm sure that you're the most suitable person for me. Looking at his uneasy expression, I chuckled and patted his hand, and said to the driver, "Drive. The wedding might be late." He let out a sigh of relief, and the car fell into silence again. When we passed the cross-sea bridge, I opened the window and looked at the merging of the sea and the sky under the blowing of the boundless sea breeze. My heart suddenly felt as if a piece was missing, and I felt that something was gradually fading away. It was my persistent love. I missed the brave Joseph who appeared out of nowhere when we first met. The Joseph who was uniquely mine. I suddenly thought of Olivia again. She was like the liqueur chocolate she liked. She thought it was still as wonderful as in her memory. But when the current Joseph actually tasted it, his first reaction was to dislike its cheap taste. In fact, the chocolate hadn't changed. It was him who had changed. He loved the chocolate in his memory, not the current one, just as I loved the brave and single-minded him in the past, not the current him who was swaying, weighing, restraining, and even cowardly. 6 years ago, I planted the seeds of love in the old park and carefully watered them with time. Now it has finally blossomed and borne fruit. Unfortunately, it was wrong from the very beginning, and this result was a bitter one. I terrifyingly found that he was gradually becoming my shadow. My luxurious wedding dress was like the mourning clothes that I had just taken off not long ago. The wedding had turned into a funeral, and it was about to bury the rest of my life. I couldn't help but want to run away. Chapter 8. The MC had asked 6 times, "Ms. Jessica, do you want to marry the man in front of you?" I heard it clearly every time, but I really couldn't say, "I do." Just now in the dressing room, Joseph received a call saying that a friend had arrived and he needed to go downstairs to greet the guests. It was such a normal reason, but how could I not see through it? I left everyone behind, took off my high heels, and easily witnessed the love between 2 lovers on the fire escape on the same floor of the hotel. You clearly still love me. Even the wedding venue is decorated in the way I like. Why won't you forgive me? Just because I've been married. He replied indifferently. She accompanied me through the past few years. You're overthinking it. I don't love you anymore. It's just that old habits die hard. Olivia naturally didn't believe it and stubbornly argued. I know you're just being angry with me. Your feelings for her are just a sense of responsibility. Then she changed to a pleading tone. I was wrong before. I'm back now. I'll make it up to you in the future. Okay. After saying that, she kissed him. Joseph had his back to me, and I couldn't see his expression, but he didn't push her away. I turned around and went back to the dressing room. When I looked up at the mirror, I was surprised to find that I was actually crying. I finally made a decision. Mom must be very sad. The silly words I said when I was a child had come true. I walked towards my groom step by step alone, holding the bouquet. It was a short distance. Joseph was smiling at me at the end. I remembered that before I walked out, the last time I looked at my phone, Olivia had sent a set of photos of our wedding venue with the caption, "This should have been my wedding." I had nothing to refute. Indeed, everything was as it should be in her dreams. Her exclusive romance. It was full of the European fairy tale style. Angel-shaped decorations were half hanging above the stage. The slender candlesticks were retro and elegant. The background wall was a magnificent castle. Among the overlapping flowers and leaves at the door, there were the mushrooms and rabbits from fairy tales hidden. I almost forgot that I was the bride. Finally, when the MC asked for the 6th time, I mustered up the courage and gave an answer. I didn't want to marry Joseph anymore. I looked into Joseph's eyes seriously and said, I don't want to. Since she couldn't let go of it so much, why should I be the bad guy and break up the lovers? Adding more regrets. I didn't care about the person and the wedding that didn't suit me anymore. I tore off the veil and threw away the bouquet. Joseph was caught off guard by me and quickly grabbed my wrist, saying, Jessica, stop messing around. Getting married isn't a small matter. I laughed and asked him irritably, Getting married really isn't a small matter. So why should I settle for less? He was speechless. But he held me even tighter and refused to let go. Don't leave. Jessica, I love you. Yes, I love you. Trust me one more time. Okay. It was as if he had suddenly realized something. But it was too late. I didn't love the current him anymore. I still loved the Joseph who had amazed me when I was most frightened and was brave enough to give his whole heart, even if the person he gave it to wasn't me. And the current him was gradually taking on the shadow of my father. But I would never allow myself to end up like my mother. Since I knew this was a road of no return, I should turn back in time. Really, I remember you said that you wouldn't force someone who doesn't love you to stay. Joseph, I don't love you now. He was startled by the trace of disgust that couldn't help but show in my eyes and let go of my hand. I lifted the hem of my wedding dress. Under the surprised or curious gazes of everyone, I turned around and left along the stage that I had just walked through step by step, and walked out of the auditorium gate with big strides. Smiling, I loved with all my might and left without any regrets. From now on, I'm going to find the candies that suit my taste.